Very good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
So we start from where we had left off.
Yes,
Today
sir.
we were looking at the two major decision-making understanding. One was our limitation in this way of resources that we have to pool, and the other was the choices that we had. So our list of and how we can optimize this. So we have discovered some optimization rules in the last class, which come from the utility, which is the choices that we have to make regarding what and where we would like to spend the income that we have generated, the money that we have earned. And of course, there is a limit to what we can earn. Everybody has their limits. So we have to keep that in mind, that there is a constraint there. And as far as the choices are concerned, there is a utility, different utility for different services and products, and we have to choose from them. So when we look at the optimization rules, the first optimization rule was very simple. When only one good is consumed and is available free, we consume till the marginal utility becomes zero. So when, and this of course we derive from law of diminishing marginal utility, which of course is that as we go on consuming, the utility of the same service or the same product keeps decreasing till ultimately it is no longer of any, it doesn't give any satisfaction. So that is the first rule. So we consume it till the utility becomes zero, because it is available to us free. But when it is available to us for a price, then obviously the second rule will apply. That is the marginal utility, it is consumed till the marginal utility reaches its price. At that point, when more than one good is consumed, the are different, then we will consume the marginal utility of one product divided by the price of the other product. Just a minute, I think there is some network issue. No, it is okay. If there is any problem in this audio and video reaching you, please let me know, because I'm getting messages here from team for some reason or the other. So the optimization rule 2, I should check that.
Sir, can you please explain the optimization rule 1 again?
Yeah. So when we look at the optimization rules comes from basically the law of diminishing marginal utility. And I had told you what is law of diminishing marginal utility. any product, let us say you come from the heat into a room, and that reminds me that I must tell you that I refer mainly to some books. Currently, of course, I'm referring to three books: Lepse, then Gregory Math, and of course Suma Damodaran. These three books I'm referring to, and there are classics which I have studied a lot, like Stoney and Haig, a textbook of economics. Then, and these are all available in the library. There are economics from the Pearson, Jackson is there, and of course these books I've studied earlier, a lot of them, from Mukherjee. So you have to study more than one, actually understand and grasp everything. But I love some of the books like Gregory and Mankiw. He has written a whole book which is more like a storybook than like a textbook. So I enjoyed reading it. And there are some other books also which I like because of certain other characteristics, like when you talk of lips, the graphs and all are so beautifully explained. They won't find such explanation in other books. Damodaran has got such brilliant managerial economic cases, and of course, it has explained the basics very well. So those books I would refer that you can also go through them. And of course, there is the Vedi and all, which people refer to, and these books are available in the library. So, as and when it is possible for you, you should get those books and read them. I guess the lockdown has been extended till 9th September, so we have to wait till then. But after that, I hope it is possible for you to get those books and use the library. Right now, you which are available on the internet, and I've already sent you some links, and I'll be sending you all the TPTs. So when we talk of law of diminishing marginal utility, it is how if you eat an ice cream, the first one, the second one, you enjoyed the first one so much, but the second one, the enjoyment has decreased a little bit. Third one, again, further, you're already filled with two ice creams. So the third one, just routinely you take it without really enjoying it much. Fourth one would be a labor to eat that. It would entail some effort on your part to eat it. By the time you reach the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, then you say, no, I cannot look at an ice cream anymore. That is where the marginal utility has become zero. You cannot look at an ice cream. This is because of the law of diminishing marginal utility. Until you buy something, if you want to buy a motorcycle, you're so excited, you dream about it for days. And then finally, when you get it and when you buy it, it becomes worthless. You start looking towards more costlier ones. Start looking towards maybe four-wheelers or maybe bikes which are beyond your reach, because that is how it is. The marginal utility has decreased because you now have it. So having it reduces the marginal utility, and it goes on till it becomes nil. When it becomes nil, of course, you do not. So a good is consumed and is available free. We consume till the marginal utility becomes zero. If it is available for a price, this is the first. If it is available for a price, then we consume, we reach the price. So the marginal utility is reached when we reach the price. The third rule if there are more than one goods which are at stake, then we consume till the marginal utility of one goods divided by price of another is equal to the marginal utility of the other divided by the price of that. Algebraically, we can represent it as MUX by PX is equal to MUY by PY, and which is equal to further, we can go for the third product also in a similar way, MUZ by PZ dash 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 till MUN dot PN, n numbers. It go on. That is the third optimization rules. So these are the three optimization rules. If it is not clear, you can ask me again. If it is clear, then we can move forward. I guess it is clear to you. So when we are looking at optimization, the ordinal approach, before we move that, I think somebody was asking about non-satiation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it clear to you now?
No, sir, not exactly.
Not clear. What
Yes, sir,
was
not
it
clear.
that I had told you? You tell me first. What had I told you? What is non-satiation?
Sir, you said that a rational consumer will always prefer more goods. Like, agar 4 apples are available to him at a price lower than what two bananas are available, then he will go for apple. So it means the rational consumer will always want to will always prefer these more goods on less goods, like this sort of thing you said.
Yes, but it was not apples and bananas, it was apples and apples. So it has to be the same product. So that is where your confusion lies. So when it is the same product, we would always prefer more to less. The fact is, of course, it does a little bit with the diminishing margin, which says that the more we consume, the utility becomes less. It is true. And this is also an assumption with which we have proceeded from the beginning. These are assumptions based on which we have to. That is, if there is an option of 2 and 4 apples, then any rational consumer would go for 4 apples. He would not prefer 2 apples at the same price. So his desire would be to have more for something than less of something. That is the meaning of non-satiation. It is not that he has become satisfied, his utility is over, therefore he will not have any more. That is not going to be true. He will have more. That is what we assume. Only then we can proceed forward with our basic understanding.
But sir, when we see the person has been satisfied or he's on the verge of satisfaction, and his marginal utility is going to decreasing and decreasing, so why will he consume more? Like, अगर उसको अभी सिर्फ 2 apples की need और है, तो वो 4 apples क्यों लेगा? वो 2 लेगा और अपने आप को satisfy करेगा.
Right. This is understanding that you have, and that is what is law of diminishing marginal utility. That why will he have more when he can consume only 2? If he has, probably he'll not be able to eat it, and it will rot in the next day. So it is no use to him. Therefore, he will have only 2. That is there. But we take an assumption that he will not do like that. He will do the reverse. He will always opt for more than less. This is the assumption with which we have preceded. So the three that we have, it is not always true that if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, A will be equal to C. Assumption with which we have to move. Then only, unless there is transactional effect, we cannot apply this theory at all, the theory to which we are coming. Okay? So that is why we have these assumptions. What are assumptions? If you studied anything, any model, any theory, then there are certain assumptions we take. So for example, when we study the law of demand, we assume all other factors are constant. So all other factors which affect demand, demand is not just, demand is also influenced by income, by taste, by fashion, by level of production, that is supply, by the economy, what is the economic situation. All these also affect demand. But we assume that they are all going to be constant. When they are constant and we only look at price and quantity demanded, then how it will behave, that is what we study in that model. Similarly, we have three assumptions with moving towards a model. These assumptions are made assuming that it will be like this. Is it clear?
Sorry, sir, but I could not understand that how this assumption will help us in like economic perspective. Like जो बाकी दो assumption थी like completeness and transitivity, that I understood कि ऐसे इनको apply होगा ये सब. But how non-satiation will be applicable? Like
तो वैसे
how
ही
it has.
non-satiation भी जो है वो assumption है सबसे पहले तो. Whether it is true or not, that is what you are arguing. But don't argue whether it is true or not. Understand what it is and then say that we have assumed that things will be like this. So don't argue whether people will prefer 2 apples or 4 apples. That is always possible that there is a time when non-transitional situation is also there. So you cannot translate A to C. There will be such situations, but we assume that it will. Similarly, there will be situations where people will prefer 2 to 4. But we are ignoring such situations. We are only discussing those situations will prefer of any product. Larger quantity would be more preferable to the lesser quantity. That is the assumption of non-satiation.
Okay,
Clear?
sir, thank you. Yes, sir, it's clear now. Thank you.
Welcome. So when we look at, now we move towards that model, we are coming to it. And you will see that we will finally arrive at consumers optimization. We want to optimize the consumer. So how we do it? Rank order of preferences. So this is another ordinal approach. So here we do not take any units or utils. We are talking about rank ordering of preferences. So which one will be preferred more? So I will have a list, in which list the most preferred goods will be top, the lesser one next, more lesser the third, and so on. So I will have a list. And various combinations of goods, if we take 2 combinations, then we try to arrive at the optimal combination for 2 products. So there is a preference set and an opportunity set. So what we prefer and what opportunity we have. The preference set comes from my list of rank ordering. And the opportunity set comes from my income or my disposable income, with which I can purchase these products. So when we look at the preference set, we have an indifference curve. Now, when we say an indifference curve, we first understand what is the meaning of indifference. Anybody can tell us what it is meant by indifference?
So,
Yeah.
so indifference curve refers to the graphical
No,
representation.
we are not talking about indifference curve, mind you. I'm only saying what is the meaning of indifference.
So indifference refers when there are more than when there are bundle of two commodities. So consumer has to decide that which commodity he has to prefer, so that the total satisfaction remains the same. So he's actually indifferent between
Again,
two
you
commodities.
did not enlighten us. What is indifference? We want to know just no product, nothing. What is the meaning of indifference? What do you mean by indifference? English meaning. You have
So
studied English.
yes, sir.
So in English, we use the word indifference.
Yes, sir.
So I'm indifferent to a lot
Some
of things.
not
What
affected
does
by
that
any.
mean? Not affected.
So may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So indifference means static, something the other things something to whom other thing is not very effective, or the influence of other thing is very less on something. So as we always say that the person is very indifferent from the uh, about so not so concerned.
Not so concerned is what you understand.
Yes.
Indifference. When we say a person is indifferent to
So not
something,
having impact of other things.
So a person who is not
he
biased
it
towards something.
the
Exactly.
difference actually what it means is a person he it doesn't make any difference to him whether he has something or he doesn't have something. So that is when we say he's indifferent. Supposing somebody uh, uh, is very keen on getting selected to a football team. Another person is not so keen in getting selected to the football team, but he may be a good player. While the other fellow who wants to get selected may not be a good player. So the one who is a good player, for him, he is indifferent whether he's in the team or not, because he's not so keen on getting into the team. But the other fellow, to him, it makes a big difference whether he gets into the team or not, because he's so eager to get into the team. He doesn't get in, of course, because he is not a good player. So when we say indifference, we basically are trying to say that it does not make a difference to him whether he gets it or he doesn't get it. You understand? So when you are in a situation where it will not create any kind of difference, then we say he is indifferent or it is indifferent. So that is what something which we have to understand properly before we understand the indifference curve. So when we understand the indifference curve, now this curve will be a line of points where at those points a consumer will be indifferent to whether he is at point A, B, or C, or at any point on the indifference curve. To him, it will be all same. It doesn't make a difference to him. You can put him on any of the points on the lines of the indifference curve. Have you understood what I'm trying to say? If there is a
Yes, sir.
graph, there is a line on the graph, then we can put him on the line on the graph, A, B, C, D. These are points on the line. So if you put him at A or B or C or D, he will be indifferent to it. It will make no difference to him where you have put him. Okay. Now, the properties of indifference curve are they are always sloping downwards. They are convex to the origin. They are non-intersecting. They do not intersect with each other. And they do not meet either the x-axis or the y-axis at any point. So at some point they come and level off with the y-axis, and at some point it comes and levels off with the x-axis. So obviously there will be a way in which it will look. So this is the way a indifference curve generally looks. The first one is a normal curve with normal substitutes available in the market. It will look like this, where the marginal rate of technical substitution is decreasing. Now, if we look at this first curve, you know, before we discuss the shapes of the indifference curve, let us look at the indifference curve itself. So I will just show you the indifference curve. Okay, so you can see a blank screen.
Yes.
Okay, so we will have two axes on this. What will be the y-axis? What are we going to have on the y-axis?
So good Y and good X on both the axes, like two goods.
Two goods. Okay, so let us say we have goods like apple on the y-axis. And on the y-axis, we have another goods, let us say oranges. Okay, now we have a normal indifference curve. Now, on these, we have different points. So when we look at the different points, we can have a point like So this is a point. This is a point A on the, at point A, how many apples are we having? 5. And how many oranges we are having? 1. Now let us have another point. Let us say a point B. This is point B. At this point B, what is the quantity that the consumer is going to get? He will get uh, two apples. And how many oranges he is going to get? He will get, say, 4 oranges. So now, whether option A or B, he will be indifferent to it. It will not make any difference to him. Is it understood? And of course, you can have a point C again, where it will be a different combination. Number of oranges will increase, the number of apples will decrease. At a point D, where the number of apples will remain 1, the oranges will also reduce. So this is what to him, what will be, he will be indifferent to. So this is what we call the indifference curve. So we call it the indifference curve, and we are indifferent to it. Is it clear, or is there any doubt? Have you seen how we made the indifference curve?
Yes, sir.
Is it clear, or is there any doubt?
No, sir, it is clear.
Fine. So now that we have seen how the indifference curve is there, we will move on to our different shapes of indifference curve. When we are looking at different shapes of the indifference curve, we see that when a product has a normal substitute, for example, apples and oranges are normal substitute of each other. If we do not have apples, we can do with oranges. They are both fruits that we consume. So it is a normal substitution. Now, if this same line becomes a straight line, then it is a perfect substitute. That means an equal quantity of one, we get equal quantity of the other. So when the quantities are equal, means they are perfect substitute. For instead of apples, if I have oranges or the same numbers, then they are perfect substitute of each other. For example, if we look at perfect substitutes, we can think in terms of tea and coffee. If I have a tea, I will have a cup of tea. If I have coffee, I will have a cup of coffee. I'm not going to have 2 cups of tea for 1 cup of coffee or anything like that, because they are perfect substitute. I will have exactly 1 cup and it will give me the same satisfaction. So they are perfect substitute. If I will need to have 2 cups of tea to compensate for 1 cup of coffee, then there will not be a perfect substitute. Then it will become a normal substitute and the shape will again become shaped like the first one. Now, if one has got a fixed proportion to the other, because it is a complementary product, then you will get a L-shaped curve where one product is fixed for a certain quantity of the other. And when the other becomes fixed, the other quantity starts changing. So at least one of them are going to be fixed at any given point. So that is how the shape will come and it will become an L. But we deal with normal goods generally. So we get it is the first one, indifference curve. So if an indifference curve is supposed to be drawn, then you will draw something like in the first case. Of course, they need to be parallel to the X and Y axis at one point. The first one is parallel to the X axis to a certain extent, but to the Y, it has become slightly curving inwards, which it should not be. So you have to ignore such things. Now, when we look at the budget or the opportunity set that we have, which is of course our disposable income. So that is defined by the budget constraint. So that will be a straight line. And the equation for the straight line is of course very simple. Y is equal to mx. So going by that, we have 6x plus 3y is equal to 60. That is budgetary constraint, where P is the point on the x-axis and Y is the point on the y-axis. On the y-axis, we have Py and Px. And generally, this is a cost. So we have 10 and 20, and these lines. In case of opportunity set, they are straight lines which are meeting y-axis and x-axis. So they touch both y-axis and the x-axis, and all points on this line are the different budgets that you will use. And this, of course, will be the constraint or the minimum amount of money that you will need to pay for different combination of the products. So this line represents those points where you have to pay the minimum price. Now, when we want to look for the consumer's equilibrium or the optimal combination, we combine these two graphs. That is the indifference curve and the budget line. And when we combine them, we will get a point where the budget line would be at a tangent to the indifference curve. So on the indifference curve, it doesn't make a difference wherever we are on the slope. For the consumer, it doesn't make a difference, but it makes a difference to him and to be at the tangent, because at the tangent, he will get a cost which will be the minimum cost. At all other points, he will have to go in for a higher budget. Therefore, he will choose a point where the indifference curve is a tangent to the opportunity line or the budget line, and that will be the consumer's equilibrium or the optimal combination. So he will make a decision to reach there. And when he reaches there, so you have the slope of the budget line, Px by Py, and the slope of the indifference curve, which would be Mux by Muy, and the equilibrium therefore would be at Mux by Muy is equal to Px by Py, or Mux divided by Px, Muy divided by Py. That is where you would get the equilibrium for the consumer's equilibrium, and that is where the consumer would be best rewarded for his having spent the money. So when we look for changes in equilibrium when the price changes, so obviously what happens is the price changes, price of the products. The relative price changes gets reflected in the slope of the budget line. So what happens? The slope of the budget line will change, and therefore there will be new point of tangency between the indifference curve and the new budget line. So the equilibrium will shift to that point at tangent to the new line. And when we combine all the points of different prices of a product, we call it the PCC or the price consumption curve. You can see that the price of X is falling. So as it falls, you have different indifference curve to which it is at tangent. So the indifference curve will change to a new indifference curve, and we can join all these points to form the price consumption curve or the PCC. Now when we try to look for the demand curve somewhere, and we look for the data which is constrained in the optimum level of consumption of X and optimal level of consumption of Y, the demand curve for X requires the price of X and quantity consumed of X. So every point on the PCC gives the price of X and quantity demanded, which will be similar to the demand curve. Now we look for changes in equilibrium when income changes. So we first look for price change, and now we are looking for change in income. So that means there will be parallel shift of the budget line, because the whole line is going to align into a new line. So there will be a new tangency between indifference curve and the new budget line. So this also will change, and this will look like this, because the income changes, therefore the whole line shifts parallelly upwards if the income increases, and new indifference curves will be meeting it tangentially, and then we have a line through those points, which is known as income consumption curve, or the ICC. And this ICC will look like this. So this is the income consumption curve. We had the price consumption curve. We now have the income consumption curve. Now, when we talk of income consumption curve, if the goods are superior, the ICC is upward. In case of inferior goods, the ICC is sloping downwards. When the income increases, we prefer to buy goods which are superior, and we ignore buying inferior goods which we were buying because of our budgetary constraint. So we now spend the money on better goods, on more quality product. If the goods are normal, the PCC will be upward sloping. It will be downward sloping if one of them is a Giffen goods, which is of course our cheaper goods. That is how the Giffen goods are defined. You understand Giffen goods? I don't think we have explained Giffen goods to you so far. Is it explained or not? Tell me so that I can proceed forward.
No, sir, it is not explained.
It was not explained, sir.
You have got it in your text. So if anybody can tell us what is Giffen goods, I would welcome that.
Yes, sir, I can try.
Please try.
Yes, sir. So Giffen goods are those goods which are available at a very cheaper price. Like we take, for example, safety pin. These are available at a very low price. So these are Giffen goods.
Okay.
Sir, by different goods, do you mean complementary goods, substitute goods, or do you mean anything else?
We mean something else. Now, we had an economist called Giffen. Okay. Of course, there is also the Veblen effect. These are found in the chapter Law of Demand. Wherever you study the law of demand, you will have a subtopic which are known as exceptions to the law of demand, which means these do not follow the law of
Giffen
demand.
goods is not goods.
Goods is one of the exceptions to the law of demand. So is the Veblen effect. Veblen was another economist. These economists, how has this law come be present situation? I think I have explained this to you. When I said, what are principles, I was explaining this to you in the beginning in management. I told you how these things come about. So we have scientists who have hypotheses. These hypotheses are taken and then research is done on the hypothesis. Research is done by conducting an experiment, by practically doing it and seeing it. So that is experimentation through other means also, of course. And at the end of any such research, they either accept or reject the hypothesis. So we call it the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. If it is accepted, it is a null hypothesis. If it is rejected, we say the alternate hypothesis is accepted, which means that it is true or it is not true. So these law of demand came into being, and for years, thousands of people did the experiment to see whether this was true or not. Now, everybody found it to be true. But there were certain economists who found it to be not true. These are known as exceptions. So we accept the law because out of, say, 10,000 or 1 lakh experiments, only 2 or 3 were found to be not true. All others were found to be true. So when such a huge ratio says it is true, we accept the law. It is true. But we acknowledge the fact that these are the exceptions to the law when it is not true. So one such was Veblen. Veblen was an economist who found that for luxurious items, which are having very high cost, like say Mercedes or say high-priced jewelries, for them, the law of demand is not true. We call it the Veblen effect. He was an economist and he found this, and we proceeded with that concept. So that you will find in books. This is one of the facts that for luxurious item, the law of demand does not hold true. And for another kind of item also, it does not hold true. This was given by Giffen, and these group of goods are known as Giffen's goods. So these goods are actually cheaper goods. So it has to be goods which are not only low priced, but also considered as cheap. And cheap will always be in terms of substitutes. For example, if we take the safety pin, what is the substitute for a safety pin? You cannot think of a substitute of a safety pin. Therefore, whether it is cheap or costly does not make it a Giffen goods. The substitute has to be there, which will make it into a cheaper goods. For example, the most common example which you find in the book is given as potatoes and meat. For example, and of course, these are also not only cheaper goods, they have to be, need to be essential goods, goods without which we cannot do. We can do without safety pins, but we cannot do without potatoes. We have something to eat. We cannot go hungry. So that is an essential product, basically. So when we look for such products, now at a certain time, people used to eat bajra. Now everybody eats, nobody eats bajra. Unless they are very health conscious, then they will start eating bajra. But at one point, people used to eat bajra because they were poor people. They had budgetary constraint. So how the budgetary constraint comes in, I will explain. For Giffen goods, say a poor person, he has a particular amount of budget. So he has 100 rupees to spend, and he goes to the market and he finds that the price of potatoes is 10 rupees. So he buys 5 kgs of potatoes and he finds the price of meat is 25 rupees. So he buys 2 kgs of meat. So total he has got 7 kgs and he comes home. So he has got 7 kgs and he can eat for the whole month. He can have potatoes and he can have meat on certain days, but he would have preferred to have meat on all days because to him that is more lucrative. But because of his budgetary constraint, he has got only 100 rupees. He will have 5 kgs of potatoes and 2 kgs of meat in the month. Now this 7 kgs has to be kept in mind, because if he buys less than 7 kgs, what will happen to him? He will have to go hungry on certain days, which he would prefer not to. Now what he does is, he goes to the market again and he finds that the price of potatoes has increased from 10 rupees to 20 rupees. What does he do? His income remains 100 rupees. So if he buys in the same ratio, he will get 2.5 kgs of potatoes and 2 kgs of meat. So he will have 4, half the month he will have to go hungry. So what does he do? He decides to buy potatoes 5 kgs. So he spends the entire 100 rupees on potatoes. Or he may decide to buy 4 kgs and 1 kg he has to optimize. He wants to go hungry on less number of days. So instead of buying less, he has landed up buying more of potatoes, in spite of the fact that the price has increased double. If the price had increased to 15 rupees, he could have got into a position where he will now buy 1 kg of meat. And of course, he will somehow get 4.5 kgs of potatoes. So this is the given goods. And this is the reason why even when the price increases of the cheaper goods, people buy more of it instead of less. Similar example can be given for wheat and bajra. Certain Indian textbooks give the example of wheat and bajra. A foreign textbook will give you the potatoes and the meat example. So such examples are there and such products are there. They have to be inferior goods. And of course, that is the concept. If it is clear, please let me know.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So PCC would be sloping downwards if one of them is a given goods. So we have the concept of superior goods. The demand curve for given goods will have a positive slope. Since it is directly proportional, it will be more like the supply curve instead of the demand curve. So where do we apply? How is it used in business and of course in the welfare efforts of the government? So when we talk of welfare effects, whether the government should go for a direct tax or an indirect tax comes from the indifference curve. This decision is dependent on the indifference curve, and therefore we call it an application of indifference curve. So the indirect tax changes slope of the budget line and the consumer shifts to a lower indifference curve. When we say direct tax, that shifts the budget line parallelly inwards and the consumer shifts to the lower indifference curve. But higher than in indirect cases. Why is this? Because the shift has been parallel. Indirect tax changes price structure. So it imposes both substitution and income effect. This is the reason. There are two effects which is happening because of indirect tax. So government has to, when they are planning whether they could go for a direct tax or an indirect tax. And if we take direct taxes, only income effect is imposed. Now we have another application, whether you need to take a rest or whether you need to work is a choice that one has. So here the two, instead of two goods, we have leisure and work. So it basically comes down to whether you are thinking in terms of work or leisure. So how is that going to happen? So the maximum number of work hours which is available to us, and n will be the number of leisure hours, which will be when subtracted from capital T, which is the maximum work hours. You have n, and W is the wages that you get. The wages that you will get will be for working, not for leisure. And the cost of the leisure is going to be C, which will be WT minus WN. You could have worked for the N time also, but since you are not working, you are not going to get. So what you get minus what you will not get. The slope of the budget line would be W, the work opportunity that you have. So if the W increases, leisure becomes costlier. If W decreases, leisure becomes cheaper. Substitution of a change in W. If W increases, leisure becomes costly and hence less leisure and more work. If income effect is there, then the W will change. That means that you'll get more wages or less wages, and that will change the way you look at leisure now. So if the W increases, the preference for leisure increases because it's a superior goods. It now becomes more. So if substitution effect is there, then if the W increases, it will lead to more. And if income effect is greater than the substitution effect, then if W increases, it will lead to more leisure. That is how it happens. And that is the kind of curve that get. Curve which is more like a supply curve, which is bending inwards. Wages on one hand and the quantity of labor on the other hand. As the income increases, the leisure time increases also after a certain point. So we come to the end of the class today, and be prepared for some quiz assignments, which I'll be passing on to you for attempting. That will reflect how much you have understood of the subject so far. Okay. So have a good day, and we end the class today.
Sorry, sir, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sir, can you please switch to the last slide before this one?
Yeah, sure. This is what
Yeah.
you want?
Yes, sir. So in this graph, there is actually like the slope is starting from the 0 point, like point 0
Right.
se start ho raha hai. So is it like, what does it mean that wages are 0 or income effect is 0 at this point?
If there is no income, people will not work. That is what it means.
Okay.
Nobody will be willing to work. If you don't
Okay,
give
sir.
any reward, nobody will be willing to work. That is the mean.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So call it a day today, and see you all in the next class. All the best.
Thank you, sir.